Great time. All right, today we're going to start a series, and if any of you were a part of the Christian experiments, what I'm going to do is every few weeks revert to that style of teaching because the audience is similar. And so here we go. We're going to call this the Satan Effect, a taste of paradise. And we humans were and still are designed to enjoy the power and perfection of paradise. Paradise was designed to be our natural habitat. Perfect health, no worries, dominion over the earth, and an easy connection with God were to be our norm. And to handle this godly magnificence, man was given a body with which to interact with other humans, and a soul to animate that body, and a spirit to enhance both. And God also knew that body, soul, and spirit will do nothing of lasting consequence without a lifestyle of love and the ability to believe. See, love enhances our belief, enhances our lifestyle, and together they augment our body, our soul, and our spirit. And when these are aligned, life is as close to paradise as we will ever see. Paradise is God's view of normal for us. Anything less is uncivilized. See, man and the earth started off in perfection and will eventually return to that precision. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to try to prove to you that there's a way to, at times, experience the perfection of paradise. And there's only one catch, and I call that the Satan Effect. And the introduction of one element changes everything. So first, what is the Satan Effect? In simple terms, one, the Garden of Eden was total paradise for Adam and Eve. Total. Two, when the devil and his kind are eliminated after the future judgments, God's people will once again live in paradise. So the common denominator of destruction between the paradises is Satan. Hence the term Satan Effect. See, no Satan equals paradise. It's pretty simple. It's not a hard equation. If we can learn to handle that concept, it'll help us handle any hard thing in our life. See, when the devil is removed, perfection is regained. And without the devil and his effects that we term return to their natural state, which is and always has been paradise. We're designed to live in paradise. We function best in paradise, yet we do not live in it today. Hence our problems. Back to the garden. Now think of Adam and Eve before the fall. They were perfect. They were complete humans, hand in hand, enjoying each other, barefoot through the soft grass of Eden, under the shady trees. Nice. They had body and soul. They were given a simple moral code to live by and the free will to choose between right and wrong, of which they knew. This is love. This is love. And this was all activated by a clean and uncluttered believing and empowered by the pure essence of God, which is spirit. So what makes up a human? And we need to go all the way back to what a human really is in order to understand how we can beat off the enemy so we can even have just a taste of paradise. The first ingredient of God's human was spirit, not body and soul. I'll prove it to you. And spirit was a platform from which the rest of man was built. Spirit is the chassis, the framework, the foundation on which man was going to be designed and built. And just like people might have a chassis for a car, and they're going to build this car up to what they want, but it starts with a chassis. Spirit is the chassis. Man and woman are designed to be amazing. Life was designed to be wrapped around the spiritual, totally integrated into the spirit. Go to Genesis 1. Now we're going to talk about spirit. Spirit is what allows a human to dominate in life and communicate with the Creator, and Him to communicate with us. It's a two-way thing. And the moment a person's attitude toward his spiritual connection gets severed or tainted, paradise is lost. We lack. Genesis 1:26. And God said, "Let us make man in our image." Now, I was thinking about this when I was on a jog yesterday, and I thought, this could be a lot simpler than people say. You know, some people say it was Jesus. Some people say it's God talking in the majestic plural or whatever. But just think, there was other spiritual beings around at that time, was there not? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was at least 2/3 of the angels that were on his side. And then if you think about God, his perspective of life, right at that same time, he was already in the future. So us is a big us. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And we know his likeness is spirit. Now, if spirit's invisible, how can there be a likeness? Just food for thought. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. See, we're designed to dominate. We're designed to have all our need met. There should be nothing lacking. That's what it's saying here. The world is yours. And I'm telling you, the world is yours. You know, get your stack back. It's out there. The next verse is going to show us what gives man that dominion. Verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. This image, this semblance of God is spiritual, not physical. Now notice how even the term male and female are associated with the spiritual reflection of God. Now that makes my brain hurt just to think about it. Our bodies have not even been mentioned yet. Yet the terms male and female have already been introduced and associated with spirit. It's amazing to me. We look, that's a girl, that's a girl, that's a girl, that's a guy, that's a guy, that's a guy. You know, we think of it that way. You know, but whatever the essence of true femininity, the essence of true masculinity is rooted in spirituality. Is rooted in the spiritual. 28. And God blessed them and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Okay, now still, the human body has not yet been presented. Why is spirit first? You know, God's showing us that spirit is the essence of true humanity. The chassis, the framework, the structure. You know, this is also what the enemy tries so hard to get us to overlook. So hard. Because spiritually, the Spirit of God that we have in us is the only thing that can back the enemy off. or we're just like everyone else. We're just going according to the course of the world. See, it's only the spiritual portion of man that allows us to have it all. You've been given it all. Now you got to learn how to believe to get it back. See, the entire earth was designed to enhance our lives by supplying everything that we need, as we read earlier. Learning to utilize the spiritual connection to God is how we harvest our abundance, maintain our health, and find our fulfillment. Now, body and soul is what comes next. Go to chapter 2 of Genesis, verse 7. And the Lord formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils a breath of life, and man became a living soul. So now we have body and soul introduced here. And like I said a moment ago, spirit is the chassis, the platform with which our body is designed to function. Spirit was designed to house that which we consider humanity. It's a lofty concept. And the more that you understand that, the easier it will be to believe, to receive what God has already promised. It takes a spiritual connection. This brings us to the next topic. We have a body, we have a soul that's integrated into that spirit. Now, what are we going to do with it? Remember how I said that love enhances our believing? And believing enriches our lifestyle? And together they augment body, soul, and spirit. See, body, soul, and spirit by themselves do nothing. It takes believing, and it takes a certain lifestyle choice. And that's what moves your body, soul, and spirit. It's all your life choices. Go to Mark chapter 12. Love rules. See, love, believing, and lifestyle are what set us up for success. They're what drive our spirit, our soul, our body. God is love. Mark chapter 12, verse 30. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God. Jesus Christ was talking here. With all thy heart, think believing. And with all thy soul, think life. And with all thy mind, think lifestyle. And with all thy strength, think spiritual. This is the first commandment. And the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. Jesus boiled the whole essence of man into two basic statements. Love God, love others, love rules. Got to love yourself too, if you notice that. So sort of 3 points. Love God, love others, love yourself. Believing and lifestyle are united. Go back to Genesis 2. See, believing is having a mental focus so clear, so complete, that no other thought can alter its course. It can be one's entire life energy fixated upon one task or one goal. That's believing. It's a total fixation on something. Nothing can get in, nothing can get out. It's in the zone, so to speak. See, lifestyle is our choices. So believing is that mental focus is clear. Now, lifestyle is our choices. That's all it really is. It's how we choose to utilize our believing, which in turn directs our body, soul, and spirit. Starting to see a pattern here, I hope. Verse 9, and out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that's pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, you guys have read this stuff so much, don't turn off on me. But if you notice, there's 3 categories of trees here. Not one. One tree was for looks and for food. Now just read it just like it says. See, whatever it takes to bless our soul, it's pleasant to the eyes and it's good for food. Okay, now just think. So that just think of that's whatever it takes to bless your soul life. Just like you might like looking out and seeing green trees and plants growing and flowers, right? A blue sky, of which we do not have today, and we'll have snow. We do have snow, and and then the second one. So first, it's good for food. Next, the tree was to support life. This is more than food. This is to understand the spiritual. It has to be, because it's not dealing with the body. It's to understand life. And then the third one, it's the one tree that caters to man's reason. Knowledge of good and evil, which is everything necessary to enhance our lifestyle choices. Adam and Eve had it all. They had all the information necessary to have their soul life totally cared for and blessed. Their body. And then the tree of life, they had everything necessary in order to understand their spirituality, how to operate, and how to communicate. And third, they had that other tree, and these aren't literal trees. This is an analogy. Okay? It's just a supplier. It's so we can get a mind picture. It catered to reason of good and the knowledge of good and evil. It's reason. It's the choice, which is where believing lies. See, that term tree doesn't necessarily mean there were 3 large leafy plants, bearing different kinds of fruit. It's a pretty picture, Got to think bigger. Think of a tree as anything needed to support, to bless, and to motivate mankind. But also remember, on the converse, that there is another entity, another force that's out there whose entire life existence is to distract us from our prize. Hence the Satan effect. See, these trees, quote unquote, were sources of mental, physical, and spiritual nourishment. And they also held the keys to keeping the devil at bay. Was there a devil at the time of Adam and Eve? Yes. Were they affected the first second they got spirit? Probably not. So these same keys kept them at bay and kept them in paradise. Does that make sense to you? So if we can learn to do that somehow, then we can hit points of perfection. And that's where we want to get to in this Christian experiment. In this life. We want to understand how we can live better than we see everybody else living out there. We can have our abundance. We can have our healing. Why not? See, they worked for Adam and Eve, and the same principles will work for us. It's simple. We have to start reading the Word for we have to read it on our own for what it says and let it speak to us. And not just what all this myriad of teachings that we have pounded into our heads since we were children. Be careful, because it can very much limit our believing, and it can reshift our lifestyle. And once we're out of sync, Genesis 2:15, and the Lord took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. See, the first thing this perfect man in this perfect place was tasked to do was work. Even in paradise, man has to work, which makes me think in the future when we're in paradise, probably going to have things to do. And I think here, get involved in building your own life now. Build your life now. Do what it takes to get what you need now, your money, your health, whatever you're looking for, your relationships. An example, one of my wife's nieces won the lottery. I've used this example before, but they quit their jobs, they built big homes, and they partied like there was no tomorrow. And it seemed like paradise to them. But as time went on, she and her husband grew fat. They became alcoholics, and they got sick physically. And their paradise became their prison. And after the money was gone, they had to rebuild their lives. See, all they had to do to avoid the traps associated with this easy living was they had to keep working to better themselves and help a few others along the way. See, once we think life is so easy, we have to stop working on ourselves. We're in a bad spot. We're in a bad spot. What seemed like paradise became a living hell for that couple. Paradise isn't a place, it's a lifestyle. Matthew 17. See, watch how Jesus connects believing and lifestyle to one's deliverance. Watch also how the disciples limited themselves by seeing only with their eyes. Matthew 17, verse 14. And when they were come to the multitude, there came to him a certain man, kneeling down to him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is a lunatic, and sore vexed, for oft times he falleth into the fire, and oft into the water. This man wasn't making any excuses for his son, was he? He's calling his son a lunatic. Now, if you had a child that just kept diving into fires, what would the child look like? Burns, scars, one eyebrow, whatever. It would not be the dad would have no time to relax ever. Plus, in another record, it says that he pined away. He was anorexic. The kid was getting skinnier, more and more frail, would throw himself into the water to off himself. He'd throw himself into fires. This kid was not pretty. But what drove this child? What drove this child? And I brought him to thy disciples, and they could not cure him. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Or how long am I going to have to put up with you? Bring him to me. Bring him hither to me. See, the word faithless is interesting. It means to have your believing. I used to think it meant small believing. I always thought, for years and years, I thought you have little believing or big believing. But this is apistia. It's no believing. It's off. When I first met Josephine, my wife, her and her family would say, close the lights and open the lights. They wouldn't say, turn off the lights or turn on the lights. And I was thinking, learn to open up our believing. Open your believing. Open the switch. Open the floodgates. Open it up. Either you're believing or you're not. Either I'm believing or I'm not. You're not a big believer. You're just either a believer or you're not. You believe or you don't believe. That's really how simple it is, and this will be explained further in just a minute. See, it's a new twist on believing I'm seeing. It's not big or little. We either believe or we don't, like a light switch. Click, 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 click. And sort of a different perspective, and we'll get more into this perspective in complementing teachings to this series. In verse 18. Oh, first off, I want to go back to verse 17, and it says, perverse generation. Perverse, and if you look at all, it almost means like you're facing the wrong way. It's that's what perverse means. It doesn't mean like a pervert, like we would think. Bad. It just means backwards. They're looking the wrong direction. And that's what he's telling them. You're looking in all the wrong places. You know, think of an Easter egg hunt. You know, when you got a little kid, you hit it and you sort of hint and direct. Did you look over there next to the couch? Did you look in the potted plant? Did you, and then the kid goes over there. It's just, but a lot of times the hot and cold games, you're getting hot, you're getting cold, and they're blindfolded or something, and they have to try to find you. Well, it's sort of the same thing. So, but they were, oh, faithless. You've turned your believing off and you're looking the wrong way. And that's what he's saying to this man and to his disciples. And Jesus rebuked the devil. So what? Wild spirit, but a devil spirit. It drove this kid to do unimaginable things. Imagine what the Spirit of God can do for us. It can help us find unbelievable abundance, incredible health. And he departed out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then came the disciples to Jesus apart and said, Why could we not cast him out? Pulled Jesus apart. Hey, how come we couldn't cast that thing out? And then had they done it before? Yeah, they knew how to do it. We'll get. And Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief. You had your believing switched off. Did you know believing controls what you have in you? Isn't it your spirit? Yeah. It controls your life. It controls everything. You think believing is huge? So don't you think that's something that would get hit, by the enemy? Sure. Why couldn't we do it? Because it's switched off, dudes. For verily I say unto you, if you have faith, that focused conviction, that believing as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say to this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible to you. A speck, that mustard seed is like just a flake of pepper, of crushed pepper, just a tiny flake. What he's saying is if you have believing, you can move a mountain. If you don't have believing, you can't. That's what he's saying. It's either on or off. It's not you need a mountain to believe in. It never says that. Believing is small but mighty. See, there's got to be a key in here. Howbeit this kind. Here we go. First is nothing shall be impossible. Now think of one thing that you're trying to overcome in your life right now. Or get. Just think. Don't say it out loud. What's one thing? Is it finance? Is it health? Is it forgiveness? I mean, what is it? Think of that one thing. Now, does it seem impossible? Okay. I know you're shaking your head yes on the inside, or you'd already have. The point is nothing shall be impossible. Think of it as a spiritual problem, your finances. Think of it as a spiritual problem, your health, because ultimately that's where it ties back to. It's somewhere we're missing a detail. Somewhere our believing is switched off. Again, this is elevated thinking, but we have to be able to look at ourselves with that kind of clarity, or we'll never get deliverance. Now we're going to go a lesson on believing. These disciples have been with Jesus for a few months. They too had Holy Spirit. They'd cast out devils. They had healed people. They were not able to help this possessed child or his desperate father. Jesus explains that the reason they couldn't cast out this deeply rooted and highly active spirit was because of their unbelief. as well as their lifestyle choices. Did we read 21? Howbeit this kind cometh not out but by prayer and fasting. What does that mean? To me, that sounds religious. You fall on your knees, and you pray, and then you go without eating for a few days. And if you do that, brother and sister, you're going to be able to cast out the devils. Oh my God, it's ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous. But people the writers and translators, they just don't know what to do with this stuff. Believing is on or off. And we're going to get to what this means in a minute. Cometh out by prayer and fasting. This looks like it's a key. But what does prayer and fasting mean? And so believing's on or off. The size of one's believing isn't the issue. See, because then you start thinking, well, maybe I need to believe a little bigger next time. No, just believe. Believe is a total focus with nothing integrated. Nothing can go in, nothing can go out. It's this total laser focus. There's nothing else in there. It's pure. It's uncut. It hasn't been stepped on. It has nothing added. Nothing can be subtracted. It's the full deal. That's believing. It's on or off. It'll be easier. Either we're believing or we're not believing. It's clarity of focus. Now we're going to talk about distracted focus. So what would cause this great group of men not to believe enough to heal this kid? Maybe what the kid looked like made a difference. Could the way the kid acted like a maniac? Did the dad have a rope tied to him? This kid had to be so out there that all these guys could see was the problem. And if all you can see is the problem, you can't see the solution. Think back on what you just thought about that impossible thing. About that thing that you want more, that you really need in your life. If all you see is the problem, you are not believing, because it's an integrated focus. Does that make any sense? This is huge, folks. I ask you, did their senses overwhelm their spirit? The answer is yes. Isn't that always the trap? Allowing what we see with our eyes to overpower what we know in our heart? We know better. You know God supplies all your need according to his riches and glory. You know God inhabits eternity. He owns the universe. He's our Father. He cares about every aspect of us. He has the hairs on our head numbered. He cares about everything in our life. He's given us the world for us to enjoy. Yet we don't have that thing. He's promised prosperity. He's promised health. No good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly. There's so many verses. But somehow we've been overwhelmed. Believing is knowing. Believing notices no interruptions. You cannot interrupt believing if it's true believing. You can turn it off, but once it's on, it's on. Believing is a total focus with no room for doubt. It's on or off. You ever use the term unbeliever on anybody before? They're an unbeliever. But just think how many great things are built on earth by unbelievers. I just started thinking of this. Anyone who's Christian or non-Christian can believe to do amazing things, right? I mean, just think from pyramids to skyscrapers, from sailboats to space stations, from smoke signals to smartphones. I mean, most of that's built by unbelievers. I couldn't build a cell phone. I couldn't build a pyramid. I don't want to, but the point is just think about this stuff. It's just amazing architecture, even in these godless countries. So they're unbelievers? No, they're believers. Now, I know we're talking about believing in God, but you got to watch when you use terminology where you mix it up with everything, then it mixes up what we believe is believing. Call a spade, you see. They're believers, but their believing is still limited without the Spirit of God. See, not just anyone can believe to move massive spiritual problems. Even Jesus' hand-picked posse experienced limitations. So don't feel too bad if you don't have that thing. Just keep working on your believing. Just keep it up. Keep heading in that direction. Keep learning to focus. Keep learning to get rid of distractions. You ever read a page in a book and you go, I didn't get anything out of that. Then you have to read it again a few times, and pretty soon you get your mind back so where you can read or study. It's the same thing. Do whatever it takes to get your mind back. See, believing that it takes to move deeply embedded spiritual problems takes a lifestyle of love and being comfortable with operating spiritual power. As I say, think of your problems as spiritual. Then it'll be more serious to you, maybe. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But I'm just saying that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, right? But against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places or from on high. See, it's always that. See, Galatians 5:6, don't turn there, but it says that our believing is activated by love. Believing's activated, it's energized by love. So you want to up your believing, up your love. Up your love. You have to study that out on your own. See, love is always the catalyst to personal success for a believer, Christian believer. See, Jesus says at the level of believing in Matthew 17 takes spiritual power meshing with a lifestyle integrated with love and believing. See, this will seldom be noticed by the casual Christian. Why? Because they're just integrated into society. As are we much of the day. You have to. You go to work. You watch TV. You're integrated. But all of that affects us. Let's define prayer and fasting. Go to Isaiah 58. See, to handle the hard stuff in life, whether yours or another's, takes energized spirit. See, uninterrupted believing and the discipline to maintain a lifestyle integrated with love, it takes work. Prayer and fasting is simply standing for God by living love. That's a simple definition, and we'll explain. Verse 5 of Isaiah 58. Is it such a fast that I've chosen? A day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head as a bulrush and to spread sackcloth and ashes under him? Oh, and sackcloth and ashes, that means you're ready to give up. Wilt thou call this a fast and an acceptable day to the Lord? What's our motivation? Are we doing this for show? Are we doing it for notoriety? Think of Ananias and Sapphira in Acts 5. They told the believers that they gave a lot more than they really did. But the Spirit of God worked in one of the apostles and exposed the posers. Well, the Spirit of God will help expose you when you're posing as a believer. Just because we say we're believing doesn't mean that we're believing. A believer is supposed to believe. That's why I call it a believer. That doesn't mean, don't think of it as believing in God. You have to believe to control your body, to control your spirit, to control your mind. It's believing. Now Isaiah is going to define what God calls a fast. A godly fast has nothing to do with going without food. This type of fast is what it's going to take to believe to move deeply entrenched and integrated spirits out of your way. That's the only way you'll ever succeed in this life, folks. I guarantee the problems that you have in obtaining that one thing that you're really looking for is there's another force out there trying to stop you from getting it. I'll guarantee it. So how do you circumvent that? That's what I'm trying to teach today. Verse 6, is not this the fast that I've chosen, to loose the bands of wickedness, to undo heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Are spirits heavy burdens? Yeah, you ever known anybody who was just vexed? Oh my gosh. I've seen it like crazy. People just do incredibly idiotic things and hurt themselves and hurt other people because of this stuff. It's a burden. So the fast is to loose the bands of wickedness. That's both in ourselves and in others. To break every yoke. You know what a yoke is? We're not talking about eggs here, kids. A yoke might be a harness like on a horse. A yoke's really like for an oxen. So it can do the work. It's to break every yoke, whatever is causing you to do its work. Shh, you're free. Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry? Instead of eating, to deal your bread to the hungry, that thou bring the poor that are cast out to thy house. And when thou seest the naked, thou shalt cover him. And that thou hide not thyself from thine own flesh. A lot of people will be better to everyone else than they are to their own family. I've fallen into that trap before. I'll run, and Josephine, I'll come home at night, what's up? Weren't we married? What's going on? But you feel like you got to do it. It's so important. You see, don't hide yourself from your own flesh. And you can take these literally or figuratively. The poor, what are you really willing to do to help somebody else? Most of us have trouble thinking beyond ourselves. It's hard. And especially when you get burned a few times, then it's really hard to want to give. But if we learn to detect what a real need is, then it's a little different. What is that really a need? Just like all these people having all this money that I mentioned earlier, that money didn't help them a bit. In fact, it hurt their life. Now, some people can handle millions of bucks. Some people can't handle millions of bucks. Can you even see yourself doing these things? Do you have the time to help anybody else? Do I? God knows you're busy. Yet he still asks us to do this. See, if you want to move spiritual mountains out of your life or help somebody else, it takes living at this lifestyle. This is the fast. Think of the parable of the Good Samaritan that Jesus said. Two religious guys walked past this wounded man in the ditch, and they didn't lift a finger. And this is probably that area between Jericho and Jerusalem. There's a brush country, and that's where the bandits used to hide, and people would get attacked. He's probably thrown off in the brush. You ever seen anybody just beat up and then shoved off to the side somewhere? And somebody, people walk right past him. You've seen TV shows where somebody's laying there and nobody helps. That's what this is talking about. But a societal peasant from Samaria, hated person. He not only cares for this man, but he takes him in and he pays for his urgent care and says he's going to stop back when he returns from his trip and square up with whatever else that he owes. Thinking today in what it would cost in today's dollars to leave somebody at urgent care or a hospital. What would it cost? or to hire a respite type care person to come in and care for somebody. I don't care. It wasn't cheap. If you live your life in that type of service where you will give beyond what would be the norm. Expect, verse 8. And now we're going to see 4 expectations of a loving lifestyle. This is what you can expect if you live like this. Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thine health shall spring forth speedily, and thy righteousness shall go before thee, and the glory of the Lord shall be thy reward. 1, expect the eyes of your understanding to be opened. You will see what was once cloaked in darkness. 2, expect your health to appear as timely as the sunrise. Expect it. Expect your godly lifestyle to be noticed like a shock wave in front of you, like a bow wave on a ship. You see the dolphins riding. I mean, that's going right out in front of you. Expect your godly lifestyle to be noticed like a shock wave in front of you. And number 4, expect the power of God to back you up. God's power will watch your 6, watch your back. God has you covered. You're surrounded with love. You're surrounded with power. Do you see it? Do you feel it? Do you expect it? You think Jesus ever read these verses? I bet. He memorized them. He became them. Remember that quote from Gandhi, be the change that you want to see in the world? I think live the word and change the world. Why not? Why not? All these buildings and space stations and all these big things, they're going to crumble away someday. But what we can do in the spiritual and with the spiritual power will be seen and noticed for eternity. It starts with you. Verse 9, then shalt thou call. Then you're going to call, and the Lord shall answer. Thou shalt cry, hey God, and he shall say, here I am. When you live like that, like we just read, and you need God's help. So this is telling you, even when you're that big giver, you're going to need some help sometime. You're going to hear him say, hey, I'm over here, pal. Here I am. What you need? I hear you. Verse 9 continued. If thou take away from the midst of thee the yoke, from the midst of thee, the yoke that's inside of you, whatever stifles your heart, your believing, the putting forth of the finger and speaking vanity. Stop talking about stupid stuff. Talk about things that make a difference. Only do things that head you towards your goal of helping yourself or helping somebody else. Get rid of your yoke, and then you're more free to help somebody else. Now help others. Verse 10. See, figure out what's holding you back and eliminate it. Don't worry about others taking a stand. This is back to verse 9. Just do what you were called to do. Didn't Jesus just say this didn't we just read this last week? Just go feed the sheep. Doesn't matter what this guy's doing. And that was the same thing that was said right there in that prior verse. Now 10, helping others. And if thou draw out thy soul to the hungry, draw out your soul to the hungry, and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall thy light rise in obscurity, and thy darkness shall be as noonday. You want to see the root of your problem? You want to find out what is really holding you back from getting what you want? It's right here. When you pour out your soul, then your light rises in obscurity. Darkness will be as noonday. See, without artificial light, it can't get any brighter than noontime. When we live at that level, we're no longer invisible, and the hidden darkness in our own selves will be exposed so we can expel it. Whether it's a physical problem, a mental problem, emotional problem, it doesn't matter. Spiritual, financial, it doesn't matter. The problems can be expelled when we pour our life out like that. There's always a way to give, folks. If you don't have money, then find another way to give. There's always a way to give. Doesn't matter. I'm not saying give to who. Doesn't matter. You figure that out. Sadly, seeing darkness in oneself is not always very comfortable. Sometimes we just don't want to do what it takes to change. And we see that and it's like, ooh. I know my marriage has been helped many times as I tried to help other people with their marriages. I'll think, note to self. Stop that. Stop doing that. Or better start doing this. You see, if you really want to see what's been holding you back, here is the only way to see it. If you finally want to see the blessing that God's been trying to help you see, then pull out the best of yourself and help others do the same. Verse 11, and the Lord shall guide thee continually. Imagine being guided 24/7 by God. You think he could guide you to your abundance or to your health? Yeah. And satisfy thy soul in drought and make fat thy bones. Of course, today we don't want fat bones. But at that time, the Bible only talks about a few fat people. Popular. It was hard to become fat. And it's like I talked to a doctor the other day and we were talking about diet. And he said if you eat the paleo diet, which is just meat, anything you could catch or grab or pluck, and that's it. He said no sugar, no processed foods, no grains, no nothing but what you yourself could catch or pluck. He said you'd never have to. You could eat as much as you wanted, and you'd never gain weight, and you'd never have rotten teeth. Of course, you hear about the paleo diet, but what does it take? God will take care of us. Not sure why I went off on that. So, but I guess getting to see what you want to see. You don't want to change your diet, but you want to lose weight. Not going to happen. Want to have a better marriage, but you still want to treat your wife poorly? You're not going to have a better marriage. Fill in the blank with health, whatever. You see, verse 11, and the Lord shall guide thee continually and satisfy thy soul in drought. It was make fat thy bones. That's where I went off on that. And thou shalt be like a watered garden and a spring of water whose waters fail not. How would you like to know that God will guide you to your deliverance? How would you like to know that God will guide you to your abundance? How would you like to prosper in a How would you like to have your health cared for, when it's such an elusive term now? How would you like to have enough strength and money to live the way you dream of living? Be like an irrigated garden with plenty of water. You can live at a level that you'll never see dry times, physically, mentally, spiritually. That sounds like a taste of paradise right there. Much of the world would be a wasteland today if it wasn't for irrigation. You ever flown over parts of the West and seen those green circles below when you looked out the airplane window? You see, that's a central pivot irrigation. And it's charged at one pivot point that's being pumped. You see, and then this whole pivot of sprinklers just moves around that circle. green. Otherwise, it would be nothing. It would just be wasteland, unusable. You have that availability spiritually. See, we too are going to flourish as we live a lifestyle of service guided by the Spirit of God. Verse 12, and they that shall be of thee shall build the old waste places. Thou shalt rise up the foundations of many generations, and thou shalt be called the repair store of the paths to dwell in. See, people will replicate our style of love. It be. See, this is true godly notoriety. In review, what is a Satan effect and how can we compete? The Garden of Eden was paradise. And there's going to be paradise once again in the future. Paradise is our truth. It's where we're designed to function at our best. See, today we live between the paradises because of the Satan effect. But when the devil is removed from the equation, he regained. That is paradise. And the only way to remove the Satan effect from our lives, even momentarily, so that we can have the things that we truly want, is to make sure that our body, our soul, and our spirit are motivated by a believing lifestyle of love. That is how we circumvent the Satan effect and enjoy a taste of paradise. God bless.